So we're specifically talking about the Yao, uh, what it is, where it is, how it functions, how do I access it, both sort of mentally, and how do I access it in terms of application and function.
Yes.
So one thing that I would say, and we're talking about Yao, but this would kind of apply to a lot of other kind of anatomical zones. So for one thing, everybody argues about what the Yao is. Everybody argues about what the Qua is, like specifically. If they're interested at all, they're going to have at least somewhat varied or different or specific manner of understanding and describing it and defining it than the next person, and then you have arguments. And everybody's right, of course. They start their argument by saying that.
So I should absolutely believe what you're
You
about
should
to tell me.
absolutely believe there is no Yao. So for one thing, you know what a pebble is? It's just a simple English word. You know what a boulder is? Simple English word. You know what a rock is?
Mm-hmm.
They're all different words.
Mm-hmm.
And they have no definition in science. And it would be very hard for you to define them, never mind science.
Yeah.
As long as I keep them exaggerated, they're kind of easy to define. Like,
Yes.
I know boulders somehow extra big, heavy, volume, something like that. And I know pebble is extra small, density, volumes. Stone is anything in the middle.
Yep.
But when we find something that's, half a gram different than where's the line? If I can't tell you where the line is, I can't really define
Right.
the terms. Generally, we don't have to define the terms. And you might hear what I just said about pebble, rock, and stone and think, all right, I'm going to define it. There's got to be. The point is, it doesn't need a definition. They're functional terms
Yes.
that function in the relatively amorphous, undefined realm of the mind.
Yes.
But they don't serve science at all. Science doesn't use them.
Right.
Right. Similarly, planet hadn't been like a science term. Right? It's a people term. It's a planet. Science doesn't need to describe it as a planet or planetoid or meteor or meteorite. It's like, I don't need that term, right? But once we decide we want to turn, now science is like, well, we're going to try and describe it in a way that it clears its path and has things orbit. What's the difference between a moon and a planet? While it orbits, doesn't the planet orbit a star? So it isn't particularly an important term to a scientist, or hadn't been. Now they're trying to make a case. So there's a lot of sort of terms like that. Like what's the difference between a snack, a meal, and a feast?
Right.
I know what they all mean, and I use them all. Well, maybe I don't use feast all the time, but like, where are the bounds of them? If you don't know the bounds, you don't know it. So, what's the Qua? What I know is it's this area. If I'm writing a book or making a case about my lineage, maybe I feel the need to define it.
Sure.
But then I kind of fall into the trap of seeming like I'm certain and having to make a case that I've absolutely defined something that may not need an absolute definition. Here's where I'm going with this. If you give a, 6-year-old, this athletic tape, and you say, you're an athlete now, here you go. And you say, hey, throw it to me. I don't know how old I just said, 3-year-old, whatever it was. They throw it. All right, great, they throw it. Can you throw it underhand? Yeah, throw it this way, throw it this way. Can you throw it this way? Can you throw it that way? They probably can.
Yeah.
Whether you say underhand, backhand, they could probably do it. And then you say, now you notice that you activate your tricep, then your bicep, and there's this interesting chain that leads one to the other, and then the pectoralis minor releases, which allows the wrist to come out of flexion.
Right.
The 3-year-old is like, I just want to throw the thing again. I'm getting bored, right? And you might be right anatomically to describe this particular chain of things and how it differs when you do it this way or this way. So it can be fruitful to kind of describe that chain, particularly if you're a surgeon or if you're an anatomical artist or if you are designing a bionic replacement for something, or if you are a doctor or a physical therapist, it would be interesting to understand, here's how the bicep works. But you could also just practice throwing and continually develop feedback about, well, that was slow, that arced high, that was powerful,
Right.
that is repeatable, that tired me fast, and somebody else can describe that that's because you finally relaxed your bicep and used more of your deltoids or something. They could describe it, but I don't need your description. I'm just throwing the ball, or whatever I'm throwing. I'm throwing this better than I ever have. That's my feedback. So when we say, okay, I was reading this thing and the qua, I'm supposed to access and activate and drive the power for whatever. Okay, if you're writing the book on it, you can do that. And remember, you probably can't accurately define it.
Right.
Probably not, right? I'll hold out hope, maybe somebody can, but you probably can't. You probably need to use slightly amorphous or poetic terms to describe it. But meanwhile, the other person who is illiterate, let's say, they're throwing, punching, striking, whatever, better than they ever have. How do they measure better? That's another thing.
Right.
Repeatable, fast, able to do, anaerobically, able to do with a weapon, able to do under stress, whatever. But our feedback can simply be, what is my felt experience in the world doing this practice? And I can leave it to somebody else to describe, that's because the quad, and therefore, and then it released the inguinal crease, and maybe not, maybe that's close, but it's not all of it, and maybe that's a helpful way when I read it for me to start to feel into that. But ultimately, I don't have to bring my consciousness to the quad to make it activate in a certain way. And I just said, like, bicep, tricep, and deltoid. There's
Right.
162 things that happened in a particular amplitude each at a particular time for a certain duration in a certain order in order for me to throw it. And yet I could probably just get this to land very accurately anywhere that's within my range with either hand. Like,
Right.
so is that like a brute force calculation, like a Watson IBM computer in my brain that's doing that? Or is it more like, I just kind of know how to throw it? And I'm trying to hurt you, I'm trying to scare you, I'm trying to make you lunge, I'm trying to just be nice and lob it to you. Like, I can decide all these things and not really have a mechanistic way of understanding the fractal details that are there. So just because those details can be described, and I would argue they probably can't perfectly be described, just
Sure.
because they're described doesn't mean that arriving at description is how I arrive at the start of being able to do them. I can just do them.
Yep.
Yeah?